Let's go and create a horizontal timeline in Elementor whereby, you can move along. And by the way, this is using slides or the carousel widget. You can add in whatever you want, images, icons, videos, but we're going to show you how to create this seamless horizontal timeline, and it looks great in the mobile as well. There's quite a few steps we need to go through, but if you follow it through logically, it will make sense. The first thing we're going to do is just drop in a container that's going to contain our carousel that's going to feed the timeline. Let's go into this parent carousel at the moment, and what we're going to do is set it to be a full width, so it goes all the way across. And I'm going to zero out the margin and padding so I have nothing in, well, there's no spacing in there. Then I'm going to go over and type in carousel. Make sure you got the Flexbox container obviously activated, which you should have. And we now have the carousel. What I'm going to do to this really simply is I'm actually going to get rid of the third item. Just have two at the moment, just so I get a feeling of the layout. And I'm going to go to the advanced tab. I'm going to zero out there again. And that is it for now. We will revisit these settings in a moment. In fact, let's just go and do one setting, which is the style. The navigation, and at the moment it's really faint, so I'm just going to make it be a little bit darker, something like that, just so that we can see it on screen. Right, that's all we're going to do to the slide at the moment. Now into this carousel, or into slide number 1, let me just remind you, on the carousel we currently only have 2 slides, okay? And what we do in slide 1 we will duplicate for slide 2, so slide 2 is just a placement holder at the moment. Into slide 1, we're going to drop in 2 containers, 2 child containers. Because if you don't do 2 child containers, depending on the amount of content you have, it's going to start to look very wobbly and weird. And I'll explain that as we go on to it. So into slide 1, I'm just going to go here and I'm going to drop in a container. And I might as well just go and duplicate this one while we're here like that. We've got 2 containers. So into slide 1, make sure that everything again is zeroed out. Go over to your layout and make sure it is full width. So my container is full width. My slide 1 is also full width. Notice I'm not doing any minimum height and I have zeroed everything out. Let's now go to child container number 1. Again, I'm going to make sure that it's full width and I'm going to zero out. And once I've done that, I can just copy that and I can paste style. I could have just done 1 and duplicated it, but I wanted to show you that if you had forgotten to do that, or you'd already gone and created a child container, do it and then just copy and paste the style, because we don't really have much content going on in there. So if we now go to our very first container, zeroed out, just make sure everything is full width, into the first child container, okay, that's inside of slide 1, I'm going to drop in a heading and then I'm going to drop in some text as well. We'll call it item 1 and then we will obviously have our text. Now I'm going to go to my child container 1 and I'm now just going to centralize everything like that. Notice though the wording of that text is right up against the border and you might not like that. So I'm going to go to child container 1 and I'm now just going to say give me some padding on the left and right of about 50. I'm then going to go to my text editor. By the way, you might have noticed everything is right up against one another. In my standard settings, I've set my gaps to be 0, so I have full-on control over how they look. For this particular item here, I'm going to say go and give me a row gap of about 20. I know item 1 is right against the top as well. We'll adjust that right at the end when we get to that, or at the end of doing this particular slide. Now let's go over to container number 2. This is where it gets a little bit more interesting. We're going to go and drop in a heading, and we're also going to drop in a divider line like that. What we'll do first is go to child container 2. This time I'm not going to set any padding in for this particular item because I want it to be a seamless line. But I will be adding in some padding to my parent container. But first let's get it to work, and then I'll show you what it would look like without you doing that and why it's a good idea to add some padding to your parent container. We're on child container 2, we've got a heading, we've got a divider. We're not going to add in any padding like we did for child container number 1. What we will do is we will centralize this as well. Now it's not looking very center because we have words in here. Let's go to the heading and I'm going to change this to B. Let's just go and pop in a year like 1978. You can now see that is all centralized. I've changed the size and the color of the two headings. I've now gone to the divider line and I'm going to make this be a weight of 3, and I'm going to drop down the color as well of this to be, I'm not using a global color, this is a test website, so I'm just going to go with something like that. I've changed the line to be a 2, that did look a little bit better. Now what we're going to do on the heading here, I'm going to put this into a circle. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to my advanced tab, I'm going to zero out the margin and padding, I'm going to go to my background and I'm going to give it a background color. You could, if you want, pick a global color. You could just put one in on the fly. You could also do a gradient color as well. I'm just going to change my text to be a white like that. And then I'm going to start to tinker now to make this be a circle. So I'm going to go to the style, sorry, not style, the advanced, go to the border, and I'm going to say make this be 100 so we get the circle. Go to the layout, and now I'm going to tinker with that to get the circular look. I've gone with a 15 at the top and bottom and 3 on the left and right. I mean, you could argue that I could use a different font for the numbers, but I think you get the idea of what we've done there. Now, I want the divider line to actually intersect with behind that circle. Now, before I do that, you are probably wondering, why have you done it in 2 child containers? You could do all of this in 1 child container, or even not even have a child container. You could just drop it all into the slide. There is a reason, because the content here won't always be 3 lines. It could be 5 lines, 6 lines, 1 line. And if you don't control how you do your layout, it's going to start to do this, and the line will not be seamless. It will start to look like jagged mountains. Anyway, the divider line, what we're going to do is stick this behind the heading with the year. So I'm going to go over to my layout and I'm going to give this about I think it'll be minus 40. I'm not too far off actually. 39, no, let me get this right. Yeah, it is minus 40 actually. Minus 40 is what we'll go for. Notice the line is ahead. So we're going to go to the heading and I'm going to go to my Z index and I'm just going to pop in a number 2. I don't have to put in 9999999, okay? I can just put in a number that's higher than 0 or nothing, and it will put it in front of the line. So what we now have is our initial slide. Let's just tidy it up. Let's go to slide number 1, and let's go and add in a bit of padding. So I'm going to go, give me 40 from the top and 40 from the bottom like that, because I don't want it to all be flushed up against one another. The other thing I should do is, while I'm in slide 1, is go to my layout, and I am now going to say space between. You will notice that nothing really changes no matter what I do, because everything is nicely contained within where it sits. But I'm going to go with space between. I'm also going to go to my very first child container, and I am going to say, do you know what? Give me a bit of space away from the line there. Let's go with 30. Let's just have a bit of breathing space there. Otherwise, it's flush up against one another. Now let's check how this looks on the mobile. We're going to go over to mobile. I'm just going to pop this to be 378, and it's looking fine. Notice we have the pagination dots. I don't want them, but we will get rid of them when I start to revisit the carousel settings, which is quite important. We have the navigation dots. That's absolutely fine. The spacing there looks okay. I mean, you could argue, you know, the wording looks like it's lopsided a little bit to the left, but that's because of the wording. You know, if you had smaller words, like if we were to get rid of this consecutor word over here, you can see now it starts to take up more of the space over there. Anyway, that is looking okay. I did mention earlier on that we will add some padding to the parent container. But first, let's go and add in some items, and then it will become a lot clearer. So what we're going to now do, go to our carousel, get rid of slide 2, because there is nothing there. And I'm now just going to duplicate slide 1 several times like this. I've got 7 items in there now. Obviously, go and rename them over here. Don't just do what I've done, which is leave them as slide #1, but for the tutorial, I get away with it. And you can see I've just modified the years and the headers. I haven't really modified the content. I'm going to come back to that in a moment. First, let's get rid of this space that we have here because we don't have a seamless line. So make sure you are on the carousel, go to your style, and over here we have the gap. You can make it bigger, but I would obviously say zero it out. Can you now see we have that seamless line going across there? And basically, you know, it will move left and right as you do it. The beauty about doing everything the way I'm doing it, just to reiterate why we're even doing it this way, rather than using a premium plugin or a widget you could get from somewhere else, you can do what you want. So if you wanted to have images, videos, SVGs, whatever you wanted to do, you could do. You could even put products in there with add to cart. You know, when we released product 1 on November, we released product 2 in December. You could even do stuff like that. So you have full on control. Now let me get back onto why did I have 2 child containers? Why did I do that? Let's go to child item. Let's just put this back over here. Let's go to item number 2. I am now going to increase the amount of text that we have in here. I'm going to put a return in and I'm going to do that. Can you see what's happened? I literally did it before your very eyes. Can you see what it did? We still have the line seamlessly at the bottom and the text and everything is planted at the top. The reason being is we have 2 child containers. Our slide is set to be space between. Not space around, not space evenly, space between. So child container 1 is rooted to the top. Child container 2 is rooted to the bottom. So it doesn't matter how much text I put in here. In fact, I could go in right now. Let's go into item number 3, okay? There we go. We've got an image in there. I mean, the image isn't even completed or have anything in there, but look at the layout. The line is still seamless at the bottom there, okay? We don't have a break. We don't have that jagged effect going on. So this is where the child containers and space between for the container above, which is slide, works brilliantly for you, okay? This is the beauty about what we're doing. Right, now let's get rid of that image. Let's just hit update and now view this. By the way, if you do hit the chevron, the line will disappear. I think it's a bug or a glitch there with Elementor. I'm not sure what's going on there. But the minute you go and do preview, you will see the line and you can see it's looking pretty wonderful and it works. But now what we need to do, now what we need to do is modify the settings. Because look, we start at 1978, we go along, and you can drag it if you want, okay? But we go along, and then we get to 2000, and it switches back to 1978. That's because we have infinite scroll still applied, and we need to modify the settings. So let's now go over to our carousel, okay? We go to the content. We are going to say slides on display is 3. Which it already was in a way. And I want to show 1 slide each time you scroll. I'm going to leave it as equal height. I'm going to go to my settings. I'm going to get rid of autoplay. I don't want that. I also do not want infinite scroll. And the transition duration, I'm going to leave that as a 500 as well. By the way, whenever you do this, if it suddenly disappears, don't worry, it will reappear for you. Don't start panicking. Now we go down to the navigation. Are you going to show the arrows? Well, it's not a bad idea because look, if I was to get rid of the arrows like that and hit update, and then we go over to the preview, you can, if you want, just do this. So if you want to get rid of the arrows, you can do, but sometimes doing this is a bit problematic because as I'm scrolling with my mouse now, sometimes you might accidentally start to highlight the words, which looks really ugly. So I would say leave the arrows in, but we definitely want to get rid of the pagination. So I'm going to go down here and I'm going to say, I don't want to see the dots at the bottom. Let's just completely kill that off. Now, when we return, we've got the arrows back in. And look, if I go all the way over to 2000, I cannot go anymore, right? It stops. I can't go anymore. So there we have our horizontal timeline. Now, it is a seamless line, but notice the lines go all the way to the left and right. I would say that sometimes you can get away with that, but I would say on a desktop, it looks cleaner if you have a bit of spacing. This is where I now go back to my parent container and I am going to say, well, look, at the moment, this is a full width. We could have made this be a boxed and I could have gone in and put this as a 1140 and in a minute it will appear like now. There we go, all right? So don't worry about that. So if you want to have it as a boxed width, it still works fine. So if you are going to have it as full width, put in some padding to your container, 50, 60, something, just bring it in a bit. But we've got that. And now let's just double check how does this look on the mobile. This is where, I would definitely say for the parent container, I would definitely want to go and add in about 20 on the left and right like that. And now as you scroll, you can see, now obviously though, you are going to say that is a big gap there because this one over here with loads of text is pushing it over. So just bear in mind, there is a compromise of how it's going to look on the mobile. But if you want that lovely seamless line with how everything is moving across, actually, I've just realized I've got the same date over here. Oh, let's just change this date to be 1970. No, we'll go with 1980 like that. If you want to have that seamless movement, I would say you've got to accept it with the 2 child containers. But that was, in simplicity, a very simple way. Let's just have a view of it again as to how it's going to look. Of how you could, I mean, you can, if you want, move your mouse, but I would say that's not always recommended because you get that highlight effect. That is a horizontal timeline with a line, and it works, and you have the beauty of adding in whatever you want and making it look really special and fantastic. Hey, I'm Imran, Web Squadron. I hope you like, subscribe, share, and follow. I'll see you soon.
Never break, always fight, never quit, do it right, play the game, win it life, have no shame, there's no time, feel the pain, live the grind, I could change, in my mind, pick a lane, commit and climb, the only way to win it life, I never miss.